Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. If you're an American today, this is Memorial Day today, May the 27th of 2024, and I just want to thank you for joining me for this podcast. My name is Theophilus, and I am your host. With Memorial Day, even though I'm not an American myself, I understand what it means to be living in a free country. And I've learned in business that free has a cost. And so our freedoms came at a cost. And so when I think about, being a noble father and what does that mean, I definitely don't, I try not to take that for granted as well. I am an imperfect person. I don't think for a second that just because I have a podcast and that I'm speaking into these airwaves that I find myself qualified to be speaking about these things to you. I am just as imperfect and a work in progress as the next person. And yet God qualified me and told me to come and do this, and which is why you're here listening. And so, if you're listening on the airwaves, know that we upload these onto YouTube as well. You can check those out at the Noble Father podcast YouTube channel. You do a search for that and you'll find it. The reason why I say that is, the video versions of these will also include videos, which I'll have today in today's episode. And it's something that is freely available to all. And so you're welcome to go and check those out there. In talking about Memorial Day and, the freedoms that we take for granted, as a father, this week has brought about the topic of stress. And when I think of stress, I'm actually a great example to talk about stress. If you're watching the YouTube video, or if you know me, you'll see that I have a little bit of a patchy bit of white skin on my scalp here. And when I used to have hair, the hair around that area would be white, actually. And this, from what I've learned from the doctors at the time who diagnosed me, told me that this came about through a very stressful situation, and during that time I was in a very stressed position. I had knowledge of some things that I was withholding from my parents out of trust from somebody close, and they told me to vow that never to share that with my parents, and it caused great turmoil within me. And, before I go into talking about stress and about this topic today, I want to give you a video that I watched that really spurred this conversation within me. And then I'll go to talking about it. And so to preface this video, this is Jeff Bezos talking about stress. Yes, whatever you believe about Jeff Bezos, the things that you can drum up anything you can about anybody in the world today, but just take his words and listen to what he says about stress, because it is very interesting, and I will go to talk about it after I play this video. So here it is. Just be warned that there's near the beginning of the video, he laughs, and so it can get kind of loud. I'll try to monitor the volume for you here.
I think in my particular case, I laugh a lot. So it is, there are, I think stress, you can be, I think one of the things that's very important to note about stress is that stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring, I think in large part. So stress doesn't come, people get stress wrong all the time, in my opinion. Stress doesn't come from hard work, for example. You can be working incredibly hard and loving it. And likewise, you can be out of work and incredibly stressed over that. So, and likewise, if you kind of use that as an analogy for what I was just talking about, if you're out of work, but you're going through, a disciplined approach of, a series of job interviews and so on and working to remedy that situation, you're going to be a lot less stressed than if you're just worrying about it and doing nothing.
Amazing, what he's saying. And like, it's so true. And I want you to think for a second, what does stress look like for you? What do you feel like? What do you feel whenever you are stressed? For example, you're eating a wonderful meal. I've used this analogy many times before. You're having a wonderful meal and you're having a great time, and suddenly somebody comes and gives you news of something that has happened that is causing you to feel a certain way. In my experience, right, your food instantly turns. You suddenly lose your appetite. You don't feel like eating. Your heart rate goes up. You start getting sweaty. You're stressing out, and you're starting to get concerned about what ifs, this, that, what, and you get to a point of you just don't feel like, you're just out of sorts. And pinpoint that. What is that? I want to break down some of the things that he said that really stuck out to me, and then go to talk about that. Right? He says primarily comes from not taking action over something you can have some control over. So stress comes from ignoring things you shouldn't be ignoring. We all do it. We all procrastinate. And I think back to whenever I was a child and going through school. School would provide you an agenda, and you could write down, you could organize the things that you had to do. And it was so easy to just not, to ignore it. And when you ignore it, it's like, it's Friday and you're excited for the weekend and you want to go have fun with your friends or whatever it is that you do. And every time here and there, you'll just be like an injection of this reminder of, hey, you have homework that's not finished yet. And you just like, and my practice was to suppress it and just like put it down and snuff it. And then, Saturday night rolls around and you're like, man, I still got this homework and stuff I haven't finished yet. And then you're like, but you're having so much fun. And yeah, I'll wait till later. Sunday rolls around, you go to church, and you go have asked to go over to a friend's house. While you're at your friend's house, you think about, I got homework I need to finish. Well, I'm at my friend's house, so I need to be present, so I'm going to be present. And then Sunday night rolls around, and it's bedtime, and it's too late to do your homework. You can't do it. And you're like, oh, like what am I going to do? I'm just gonna have to try to wing this somehow. And so, in my examples, usually when I get to school on Mondays and the teacher asks for homework, I go through my backpack. I dig through my backpack, like looking for my homework, pretending like I did it, but I actually left it at home or something. And in reality, it's in my bag, and I just pretend like it's not there. That's very stressful. And I did that for much of my elementary school years. And partly it is my fault, where I ended up in life. Yeah, it's partly my fault, right? Actually, fully my fault. So, that was stressful. It was really stressful to just keep pushing it off. For example, adult version of that is like taxes, right? Like nobody likes to do taxes leading up to it. It's like, oh, when's the deadline? Oh, it's in March or June or May, whatever it is. And you just keep pushing it off. It's like, oh, I can do it next week. I can do it next week. And then suddenly March, June, April, whatever rolls around, and you're like, damn, I still haven't done it yet. And then you have to do it all at once. And that's a stressful burden that we're not meant to tolerate. He also says stress does not come from hard work, right? He's like, well, yeah, there are times where you don't have work, and then you get stressed about that as well. So, I when I look at stress and when I think about stress, and as I was thinking about this podcast and about talking about it, I very much feel like stress isn't a physiological feeling. I feel like stress is a spiritual feeling, one in which we are invited by the Spirit to, hey, this is your responsibility. You are not stepping up and taking on that full on. you are making a mountain out of this molehill, and you're creating a giant for you to fight. I want to, and I'm going to back this up with some Bible verses that have, really come into my, purview when I think about stress. And I want to first address everything that, Jeff Bezos says. It was, if there is a particular thing that's causing you stress, that's a warning flag, something that you haven't completely taken action on. And then immediately, right, I wrote down, well, then that means stress is an opportunity, and stress is an invitation to do something about it, right? When I talk about stress, I think back to, Viktor Frankl and what he says about it, right? Or what he says about something that we face in life, or some kind of ordeal that we face in life. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he says, forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing, and that's your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. That is control. That is some kind of control that you can take over. So you can literally put any kind of situation into this. You could even talk about trauma. You can even say, in dealing with trauma, when you think about trauma, something that happened to you that was stressful, or it causes you traumatic stress, there is control that we can still exercise. We are not powerless. Yes, we can't go back and change the circumstance of an issue, of a scenario or something that happened, a circumstance, but we have a choice of what to look at, how to look on that situation. We can, at the very least, you can say, that scenario or that trauma that I sustained has brought me to be who I am today. And I like this version of me right now. We have no idea who that person would be if we never sustain that. We can't play out that change. So there's really no reason to control that thought and to try to think about what we could have been like, or what life could have been like, or had I had a better mother or better father, or whatever it is that would change that circumstance. Stressing about that, if anything, that is stress, because you are not able to control that outcome. The only thing we can control is right now, what am I feeling? What am I going to raise my awareness to? If I'm going to raise my awareness to the fact that life sucks right now, and that things are negative, and that things are not going well, you are right. But if you're going to choose to look at it from the positive angles and try to find the positive, raise your awareness to the things that are going well in your life, that is also true. And so in dealing with stress, it is exercising our control. What can we control in that circumstance? Now, I want to read 2 verses to you, because these are, it's so interesting. One of the dads in my group, Josh, sent me a verse this morning, and he doesn't normally do that. Just sent me a verse, and it's exactly on the topic that I was going to talk about, right? Talking about stress. And so he sent me Proverbs 12:25, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version, which says, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. Anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. That's what we're talking about right here, right? Stress weighs us down. And I'm going to talk about the physiological responses in our body of what stress does to us, because the hormones in our body really regulates everything, how we think and how we live, how we thrive. Whether we thrive or we live, it's really from that place. The other verse I wanted to read was Matthew 11:28-30, and I'm also reading in the English Standard Version for this one. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, when I read that verse, what is amazing to me is this is how I know it's a spiritual thing. Stress is a spiritual thing. Because the way he commands us, it's a command to us. Come to me. Take my yoke upon you, right? And you will find rest. He is telling you what you can control. It is a spiritual control that you have over these matters. You can choose to go down the rabbit hole of looking at your stresses and thinking about how terrible it is, how bad it is for you, and how sucky my cards are that I've been dealt, and you can go endlessly on and on and on and on, and just keep spiraling that over and over, chewing on it and hoping that you could digest it, and it never gets digested. And yet God's saying, come to me, take my burden, take my yoke upon you, right? I will give you rest. I will give you rest in your heart. My burden is light. Take that upon yourself. And so giving that up to God is really the best place to give that burden. I can only control what I think. I can only control what I can control. And yet God's giving us simple instructions on how to deal with it, how to give it up, right? Because if you can't control it, why are you holding on to it? I saw something today that was so interesting, and you need to dig it up because it is very relevant. Who knew that a little meme picture on the internet could also be a part of this discussion? And it literally, it's just a picture of a frog. It's weird. This picture of a frog, and it's showing his brain, and there's a quote above that. It says, "Maybe you don't exist in the future you're worrying about." Maybe you don't exist in the future you're worrying about. Instantly, right now, this is real time. As I read that, I think about a Bible verse, and I'm digging it up right now, literally as we're talking. Matthew 6:34, English Standard Version says, "Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Right? And if you wanted to hear the more, from a different version, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. We're not meant to go to thinking about, I got a very a pressing conversation that I'm supposed to have with two business owners tomorrow, and it's been a stressful thing for me because this business feeds my family, and it takes care of my family, and finances is something that as a man and as a married couple, God has given us to steward and to be present in. And so when things aren't going the way you're planning it to go, and people are not paying invoices that they promised they would pay, you can get very, very stressed out about it. I can't go to think about and anticipate how that conversation is going to go. I can't think about these things and remove me from being present today. But what can I control? I can only control today. I can only control right now. What are my actions right now? Am I choosing to go down that rabbit hole, or am I giving it up to God? You can't have it both ways. You either give it up or you hold on to it, right? You got it by the grip. You either let it go or you don't, right? You can't say, "God, please take this from me," and then just continue holding on to it, right? What is he going to do with that, right? He can't force your hand to open and then give it up to him. You have to be willing to give it up. You have to have a willing heart to really give that up and trust. It does take a lot of trust, and maybe that's what induces the stress as well, is because you feel the stress as well. You don't want to give up that control. As human beings, we make a big deal out of free will and freedom and whatever. And so there is a lot of trust whenever we have to give that control up, and it can be very difficult. I want to read another quote that somebody else said, and this is an author that I really liked his book. If you're ever interested in checking it out, his name is Gay Hendricks, and he wrote the book called The Big Leap, and it's a fascinating book, and it's one of my favorites, and I highly recommend it. He says in that book, stress and conflict comes from a lack of ownership and acceptance. If you've listened to this podcast before, early episodes, I'm pretty sure I've referenced this quote. Stress and conflict comes from a lack of ownership and acceptance. This is exactly what Jeff Bezos was saying, is that we have a control over something. And one of the things that I always talk about when I think about stress, and as dads, I think about my own example of like growing up, the different things that I took part in, right? You wanting to be a policeman for a time, right? And yeah, though I would have been good at it, I don't think it was for me. Going into trades, right? Was I really coming to life doing it? No, I wasn't. When I started my digital marketing agency, yeah, put in a lot of money, invested a lot, learned a lot of things, but end of the day, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't coming to life doing it. I wasn't maximizing my skills, and of course I wasn't finding my fulfillment. And so in that I was self-sabotaging, right? And yet it was like, this is what I'm doing right now. And that's, and I'm pushing myself to do these things because yes, I have to provide for the family and all these things, and yet I wasn't controlling what I was doing. I had a choice to make, right? If I wasn't coming to life doing it, well then nothing is forcing you to stay. And that's my encouragement to you as well, is that whatever you're feeling and in stress about, think about what you can control, right? Make the decisions as such. If you know you're feeling this way about your current job or about your current career, and it's causing you to be absent with your family, or it's making you stressed about life, or you feel like there's something more, that is within your control, right? You could make a game plan to really think about, how do I get out of this, or how do I make moves to get out of this in 2 years? Make a plan to get out of it in 2 years' time. Because nobody wants to be, doing something, like nobody wants to be ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring. Nobody wants to be not taking action on something you can have some control over. And so, when I think about Memorial Day, and I think about what it means to be free, and I think about the freedoms that we are granted because of somebody else's sacrifice so many years ago, I think of how for granted we take our lives. Just think about those people who died for us, right? Who went to war to fight for our freedoms. Think about their lives. Think about the dreams and the aspirations and the goals and the visions they had for their own lives, cut short by this terrible world event that ended so many lives, right? And here we are stressing out about work, about life, about finances, and yet we're not living to our utmost potential. We're not living to our goals. And that's a sad picture. That is a very sad picture. And it sucks actually, because I'm in a lot of these dad groups, and I ask them, a lot of times it's like, hey, what was your dream? What was your dream growing up? And they're so vocal about their dreams, right? It's like, oh, I wanted to be this. I wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to be an electrician. I wanted to be a plumber, whatever. And it's like, why are you not doing that? And immediately the head goes to, well, I don't got the money. I can't do this. Like, I don't have this. I never had this. Like, that is control that these people are not willing to let go of. Accept the responsibility and make a plan. Figure out how to make that a reality. And, as Noble Father podcast, I've talked about this a lot. It's like, we have an audience and they're watching us. We can't afford to miss this opportunity, right? They are watching us. They're watching us, seeing us pursue our dreams, making something of this life. And we are setting that example for them. And so we have an extra onus to be intentional and push ourselves as best as we can. Right. And what's interesting about that is, there are repercussions, right? If we don't manage the stress properly, there are repercussions. And so I want to read some of the things about stress that could really enlighten you about this. What we know from the outset is that stress very much it suppresses the immune system, right? It stops our bodily function from happening normally. So our fight or flight responses. I'm just gonna go to read this, right? When you face a perceived threat, a tiny region at the brain's base called the hypothalamus sets off an alarm system in the body. And I'm just reading from the Mayo Clinic, and whatever you believe about Mayo Clinic, whatever. I'm just gonna read it, and you can digest whatever it is from there. I'm not a scientist, and so I'm just going to read it, and we can go to talk about it. An example of a perceived threat is a large dog barking at you during your morning walk. Through nerve and hormone signals, this system prompts the adrenal glands found atop the kidneys to release a surge of hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. Right? Adrenaline makes the heartbeat faster, causes blood pressure to go up, and gives you more energy, right? So this is a direct response to fight, right? Or even to flight, right? To give you the energy to respond in kind. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, increases sugar, also called glucose, in the bloodstream, enhances the brain's use of glucose, and increases the availability of substances in the body that repairs tissues. So these two are in conjunction. They're helping you. They're playing their function to allow you to deal with the situation. Cortisol also slows functions that would be non-essential or harmful in a fight or flight situation. It changes immune system responses and suppresses the digestive system, the reproductive system, and growth processes. This complex natural alarm system also communicates with the brain regions that control mood, motivation, and fear. So, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit here because, this is, so you're starting to hear what cortisol can do to the body, right? And so you can imagine prolonged exposure to this, or prolonged conscious decision to allow cortisol to run rampant in the body, can cause different effects, right? The long-term activation of the stress response system and too much exposure to cortisol and other stress hormones can disrupt almost all the body's processes. This puts you at higher risk of many health problems, including anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, muscle tension and pain, heart disease, heart attack, high blood pressure and stroke, sleep problems, weight gain, problems with memory and focus. So listen to every single one of those things that I just read. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 things. 14 things if you separate memory and focus. That's 13 things that our body starts to shut down in. And when I went to Orlando last year and just going to Disney World, and you just kind of people watch, it blows me away. Right? Like, if you ever watched the movie WALL-E, right? The people on the ship, right? They're just drinking their Slurpees and sitting in their wheelchairs and putting around and watching screens or whatever and yelling at each other. And that's what Disney World was, And it makes me think, it's like, dude, you have so much control over, hey, getting up and, making yourself a sandwich or making yourself a salad rather than ordering a takeout, ordering a Uber Eats or whatever burger to your house and, have it delivered to your door and what have you. There's so much control over the things in our lives that we take for granted, take for granted easily. And so you can imagine if we had all these things, how long would you really live, right? If you had control and there's a spiritual invitation for you to do something about this, hey, give it up to God and actually take action on it. One of the crazy things about stress is, like, we pray for this storm to lessen, right? We pray for our problems to disappear. And yet God's way of doing these things, God's way of approaching these problems is strengthening you, giving you that control. Hey, you want the free will, right? Take your free will. Do something about it. Take control. Exercise control. God, I don't think God would answer that prayer. God would not answer that prayer and just take away this opportunity for you to grow and lean into a relationship with Him. He's not going to lessen the storm for you. He's not going to minimize your problems for you. Rather, we should be praying for strength and control, greater control maybe, for what we can control. All right, what's that prayer? Prayer for things that we can control. I think it's God, what is it called? The prayer for serenity, right? It says, God, grant me the serenity, accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Nowhere in that prayer, right? Even though it's written by, a Lutheran theologian back in 1890s and 1971 to 1971, nowhere in that prayer does it say, Lord, please lessen this storm that I am in. Lord, please lessen the problems and the struggles that I'm dealing with. Lord, please help me do the taxes. Like just take care of it. Like I don't want to have to deal with it. Please take care of it. Am I saying that God is not able to do that? No, God can do that. But God would never take away this opportunity for you to grow out of it, right? See me through this storm, Lord. Give me the strength. Good example is one of my fathers in my group. He started the year asking, his word was patience, right? He asked for patience. And what did God do? God presented him opportunities to really grow his patience and temper his patience. And he regretted it. Almost regretted it, right? Because you careful what you pray for. And, he prayed for this, asked for this, and was presented with opportunities to be patient. And that's really what life is about. And that's what stress is indicating to you. And so in whatever it is that you're going through, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's finances, in your marriage, what can you control? What are you not taking 100% responsibility for? What are you not taking extreme ownership for? Because it's so easy for us as human beings to just blame the trauma. It's so easy for us to blame the narcissistic mother. It's so easy to blame, our narcissistic friends, or blame our abusive friends, or the people who just keep taking from us. And we don't open up our can of worms. We don't open up our responsibilities in those scenarios. There is responsibility to be had in that. I can always control that, right? I always talk about Struthless, right? Talking about the top 5 questions that really changed his life. Like how is this my fault and my responsibility, right? Remember I told you he asked himself that question when he went to think about the trauma of being sexually abused. How is this my fault and my responsibility? I can't control the person who abused me. I can't control the evil that this person brought on me, but what can I control? And in his example, he said, I have a right to protect myself. I have the responsibility to protect myself. Yes, maybe I was too young to understand that, but I have that right and responsibility. That is what I can own myself, right? And he can also take Viktor Frankl's approach. What can I control? We can't take away how I see this thing. How can this trauma? I get to control that, right? I get to control who I give this burden to, right? I get to choose which burden to take on for myself. Just like Matthew 11 says, get to take on God's burden, right? His light yoke, right? And to choose to give up that burden to God. Choose to relinquish this pain and this hurt to him. Because I can't deal with it. Gosh, we've seen what I can do with it. My body acts up. Not having those conversations, not being honest, not being able to have those, not being able to let go of these things, or choosing not to let go of these things, has given me this, has caused different things in my body. And, when we think about cancer and we think about all these ailments and diseases and illnesses that we have in life, how much of it comes from this lack of ownership and this lack of acceptance? And choosing, and actually lack of action in that control to do something about it. We just keep pushing it off like my homework. We just keep leaving it behind. In reality, we are called to just let it go. We are called to give up this burden and trust it to God. I feel moved in the spirit right now that you're listening, and I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you believe, but I believe in the power of prayer. And I've never ended my podcast episodes this way. In the past, in the 2.5 years that I've been doing it, I want to take this time to pray over you, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, over these burdens that you are facing. And I'd ask that you join me if you're okay with that. Close your eyes. It's okay. If you're driving, definitely don't close your eyes. But Lord, I ask, Lord, right now, in your presence, God, no matter who it is that's listening, whatever they are going through, Lord, show them what they can control. Show them what it means to trust in you and to give you these burdens and to take on your yoke. What does that mean, Lord, to take on your yoke? Show us what that means, God. And in the storms and the things that we face, God, give us strength, give us the courage, and renew our resolve to see us through that storm. Help us to drive straight into that storm and out the other end, and not run away from it and end up running with it, Lord. We trust this life to you. We can't do it without you. And so I thank you, Father, for this opportunity to get to pray over podcast airwaves. This is a first for me. And I ask for forgiveness that I haven't done this enough, God. And I just pray this blessing over my friends, people who are listening, people who may be strangers who don't know me. I just pray that you'd give them the peace to encounter and face the things that they can have control over, to let go of the trauma, Lord, that they feel in their lives. God, and I pray that your power reaches out to them, Lord, and touches them, and that they know instantly that it was from you, God. And I just thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to be able to speak into the airwaves, Lord, and renew my resolve for the podcast. It's been a bit of a struggle and a bit of a difficulty, Lord, and I've been feeling like maybe I just don't want to continue. And Lord, there's a spiritual component to this. It's warfare. But God, you have renewed my resolve, and I thank you for this wonderful podcast to get out. Lord, it is you speaking through me in this mouthpiece, and I trust everything that I am to you. And I thank you for all the listeners. Bless them in their life and in their walks, and that in their actions of taking control and giving up of that burden, Lord, that you reward them for that. And I just want to thank you for this time of prayer. Lord, please be with us in our week and the things to come and in everything that we face. Pray these things to you in Jesus' name. Amen. That was a wonderful experience, and I've never done that before. And I feel like definitely need to do that more. We're in this time and place in the world where things are getting tougher, and more things to stress out about. And yet I hope you take what I've talked about today and start to really let go of that grip. Really start to choose to give that up to God. Because like the Bible says, it's really like grasping oil with our right hand, right? It's not for us to hold. And we aren't meant to have that control. And so definitely choose to give that up. And if you have any concerns or something, or questions, or I don't know how to do this, please don't be a stranger. Please reach out to me. I love to have conversations. I love to speak into these things in people's lives. I'd like to be creative and help you find ideas. And I also want to pray for you as well. If that is you, don't hesitate to reach out. You know how to do that. And I would do my best in my power to give you godly and brotherly wisdom about these things. I wanted to say a few things as well, and plug some things. I'm looking to build another membership, not another membership. I feel like in this stress of am I doing what I'm called to be doing? I want to create a membership where fathers who have that desire or that curiosity about their life to be able to get hands-on help, coaching, encouragement to discover that. What is that, right? The dangers about this, this field right now is that the gurus out there will tell you, this is the fad and you should chase this thing. It's always an outside-in approach. It's always, I have this thing, you should totally do it. I did foreign exchange. I did stocks for this. I did software as a service. I did digital marketing. I did all these things. There's an abundance of things that you can potentially pursue, but none of these people, maybe so few, and I haven't seen any really in my research of like, who is God calling? Who did God create you to be before you were even created? What were the things that he already put in you and instilled in you that was meant to be leveraged to do that, to be at your greatest and to find the most fulfillment doing it? I'm in the process of creating that community, and I very much like guinea pigs, people who'd want to see and try and experiment what it is about. And of course this is going to be a membership thing. There's going to be a buy-in at some point, but I always lead with value, and I always think that value speaks for itself and it pays for itself. And what I'm looking to put into this definitely warrants what I'm going to start it at. And so if you're looking to get in right away, I'd love to have you in that with me. Whether or not I keep that for fathers or mothers as well, I think that this is knowledge that is inclusive for everybody. Like God gave us all these gifts for us to do something about it. And maybe that's a wonderful opportunity for you. If you're also able to support the Patreon, or if your father that wants to find community, right? Our community now is a paid only membership, and for $25 a month, you're able to attend our meetups, attend our masterminds, find the community over on Discord, and you also have access to me as well. Fathers always reach out to me about things, and I'm always trying to speak into the things that they're ailing with, and even just to pray for them, right? We have a Bible study that we do on Wednesdays as well. Our meetups are on Thursdays. There's a lot of things that are down the chain, and I feel like if you are interested in that, you have control over that. Hey, choose to invest in yourself, choose to put money where your mouth is, and fork out that money to invest in yourself. $25 a month is nothing. You spend it on multiple cups of coffee a month. You spend that on Netflix and Spotify or whatever it is, subscriptions that you have. This may be the best $25 you ever spent on yourself. And if you know somebody who could benefit from this, please refer them to the community. It helps me to grow. It is what I use to feed my family, and I'm doing it for a good cause. This is really me setting an example of what building a business could be like for a father, and doing it from the inside out, doing it from what the gifts that God has given me. And so, yeah, again, anything that you have any curiosity about, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to be a source of help. I love to speak into these things for you. And I think that's all I want to speak about today. I feel like that was a really good episode, and I rarely feel this way, but no, I don't say rarely feel this way. It's a very uncommon feeling. It's very easy for my imposter syndrome to come up and say, "Oh, it was a terrible episode," and what have you. But today I'm embodying that. It was a good one, and really the key to that was really giving up that burden to God, giving up the attachment to the result to God, and saying, "Hey, Lord, speak through me." As you know, I flow through these episodes, right? As soon as I hit the record button, I don't script what I'm going to say. I have the outline in my head, and I just go about it, and the stories come and the things come. And so, thank the Lord for that. Definitely, this is not just a me thing. This is also a God thing. And so, however you find yourself here, remember that we are not promised tomorrow, and that we are called to be present and to stay noble. And so, thank you for joining me. I hope you find this episode well, and that you'd share this with your friends and family and people who need it. Pass this along. It helps me to grow, and it renews my resolve. I'd love to hear your words of encouragement. If you have any feedbacks, no matter it's negative or positive, just, feel free to send it to me. It reassures me that at least somebody's listening to this episode. And so thank you for joining me. Take care, and bye for now.